Ladies and gentlemen, this fight is 3 rounds in the UFC middleweight division.
In the brutal world of mixed martial arts, where careers are forged in fire and broken by defeat, few fighters have carved a legacy as raw,
absolute huge shot to the overhand, right hand connects, left hand,
unpredictable, and unforgettable as Chris, the Crippler Leben.
Tried it twice. Oh! Simpson's in trouble. Aaron Simpson's hurt.
His name conjures images of blood-soaked wars inside the cage, vicious knockouts, and a relentless, brawling style that thrilled fans and left opponents broken. He wasn't polished. He wasn't perfect.
1 minute, 7 seconds into round number 1 for your winner by KO, Chris the Crippler!
But when Chris Leben fought, he gave everything. His heart, his soul, his body. And in the process, he became one of the most beloved and feared fighters in UFC history. Chris Leben was born on July 21, 1980, in Portland, Oregon. His early life was filled with hardship and instability, growing up in a troubled household that often left him searching for direction. As a young man, he frequently found himself in trouble, battling authority and struggling to find his place. But one thing was undeniable: Leben was a fighter. He discovered his purpose in combat sports, starting with boxing and eventually embracing kickboxing. The discipline, the intensity, and the raw, one-on-one competition gave him focus. For Chris Leben, fighting wasn't just a sport. It was his path to survival and redemption. He trained relentlessly in Portland's gyms, sharpening his skills under the tutelage of some of the region's most respected coaches. But it was his time at the famed Team Quest gym, home to legends like Randy Coucher and Matt Lindland, where Leben's transformation into a professional fighter truly began. His natural toughness, combined with a southpaw stance and heavy hands, made him a nightmare for opponents. But it was his ferocity, his refusal to back down, that made him stand out. By 2005, Leben's raw talent and growing reputation earned him a spot on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. It was a groundbreaking reality series that would help catapult the UFC and MMA into the mainstream. For Leben, it was the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to show the world who he really was, and show them he did. From the very first episode of The Ultimate Fighter, Chris Leben stood out. His brash personality, wild antics, and fiery temper made him one of the most talked about contestants. Whether it was late-night drinking or heated confrontations, Leben was impossible to ignore. But inside the cage, he was all business. His relentless, come-forward style and devastating left hand quickly earned him respect. Dubbed the Crippler, Leben became known for his knockout power and fearless approach. In a time when caution ruled, his willingness to brawl made him a fan favorite. As Leben said, "I wasn't there to play it safe." Though he didn't win the competition, his time on The Ultimate Fighter made him a star. He was the villain. He was the underdog. He was the fighter fans loved to hate, and eventually just loved. Following The Ultimate Fighter, Leben quickly transitioned to the UFC, making his promotional debut in 2005. His arrival came at a time when the middleweight division was searching for stars, and Leben filled the role perfectly. He was charismatic, unpredictable, and could end a fight in an instant. In his early UFC bouts, Leben showcased the same ferocious style that made him a standout on The Ultimate Fighter. His fights against fighters like George Rivera and Patrick Cote cemented his reputation as a powerful striker with a granite chin. No matter how hard he got hit, Leben kept moving forward. His willingness to absorb punishment in order to dish it back out became his trademark. But Leben's journey was not without its struggles. A devastating knockout loss to Anderson Silva in 2006 was a humbling experience. Silva, making his UFC debut, dismantled Leben in just 49 seconds. It was a loss that Leben would carry with him, but it didn't break him. If anything, it made him more determined. "I thought I was invincible," Leben said of the loss, "but it taught me that there's always someone better. You just have to get back up and keep fighting." And fight he did. Chris Leben's fighting style embodied who he was: aggressive, fearless, and relentless. From the opening bell, he charged forward, absorbing punishment while delivering devastating strikes. His powerful left hand was his signature weapon, capable of ending fights instantly. But what truly set him apart was his iron chin and unbreakable will. Opponents threw everything they had, only to watch Leben keep coming, smiling through the blood. His relentless pressure overwhelmed technical fighters and brawlers alike. Inside the cage, there was no quit in Chris Leben. He fought with heart, risking everything for victory, and that's why fans loved him. On February 2, 2008, Leben stepped into the Octagon at UFC 82 against Alessio Sakara. It was a pivotal fight for the Crippler, a chance to reassert himself as a force in the middleweight division. From the opening bell, Leben pressed forward. Sakara, a skilled boxer, tried to keep him at bay with sharp punches and footwork, but Leben was undeterred. He absorbed Sakara's shots and kept moving, closing the distance until he found his range. Midway through the first round, Leben unleashed his signature left hook. The punch landed flush on Sakara's chin, sending him stumbling backward. Smelling blood, Leben swarmed. A barrage of punches followed, and the referee stepped in to save Sakara from further damage. It was another brutal knockout, and it earned Leben knockout of the night honors. That night, the Crippler was back. On June 19, 2010, at the Ultimate Fighter 11 final, Chris Leben faced off against Aaron Simpson. Simpson was an undefeated wrestler with a reputation for controlling fights and grinding out wins. Many believed he would impose his will on Leben and take the fight to the ground. But Leben had other plans. From the opening round, Simpson tried to implement his wrestling game plan. He landed takedowns and looked to wear Leben down. But as the fight wore on, it became clear that Simpson couldn't break him. Leben kept getting up, kept pressing forward, and kept landing shots. In the second round, the tide turned. Leben found his rhythm, landing heavy punches that rocked Simpson. A vicious combination sent Simpson reeling, and Leben swarmed, raining down punches until the referee stopped the fight. It was a classic Chris Leben performance, gritty, relentless, and ending with a knockout. Perhaps no fight better encapsulates Chris Leben's legacy than his battle with Wanderlei Silva at UFC 132. Silva, a legend of Pride FC, was known for his violent, brawling style. The matchup was a dream for fans. Two of the sport's most aggressive fighters meeting in the center of the cage. The fight didn't last long. From the opening bell, both men charged forward, throwing bombs. It was a brawl in its purest form. But it was Leben who struck first and hardest. A brutal left hand caught Silva clean, staggering the Brazilian. Leben swarmed, unleashing a flurry of punches that dropped Silva and forced the stoppage just 27 seconds into the first round. The win was one of the biggest of Leben's career. Defeating a legend like Wanderlei Silva cemented his status as one of the UFC's most dangerous middleweights. It was also a vindication of the style that made him famous. "I respected Wanderlei a lot," Leben said after the fight, "but when the cage door closes, it's time to fight. That's what I do." Chris Leben's career was filled with thrilling highs and devastating lows. He racked up notable wins against fighters like George Santiago, Mike Swick, and Yoshihiro Akiyama. His fight against Akiyama at UFC 116 is still considered one of the greatest wars in UFC history. A 3-round battle that earned Fight of the Night honors and showcased Leben's toughness and heart. In 2014, Chris Leben announced his retirement from MMA. Years of wars had taken their toll. His body was battered, and his health was at risk. But his legacy was secure. Leben's impact on the sport is undeniable. He was part of the generation that helped bring MMA into the mainstream. He was one of the stars of The Ultimate Fighter, a show that transformed the UFC. And he was a fighter who never backed down, never quit, and always came to brawl. Fans loved Chris Leben because he was authentic. What you saw was what you got. He wasn't playing a character. He wasn't trying to sell a persona. He was a fighter, pure and simple. And in the end, that's why his legacy endures. Today, Chris Leben is still involved in combat sports. He's worked as a coach, a referee, and even stepped into the world of bare-knuckle boxing. His passion for fighting remains as strong as ever. But his greatest legacy is what he left inside the cage. Chris the Crippler Leben will forever be remembered as one of the UFC's wildest, most exciting fighters. His wars, his knockouts, his willingness to leave everything in the cage. They've all become part of MMA lore. He didn't win every fight. He wasn't always the best. But when Chris Leben fought, you knew you were going to witness something unforgettable. Chris the Crippler Leben's fearless heart and relentless spirit made him a true legend of the Octagon. If his story inspired you, like, comment, and share your favorite Leben moment below. Don't forget to subscribe to Legends of the Octagon for more epic fighter stories. Stay tuned. More warrior legends are coming your way.